In 2019, we saw the release of a new Terminator game. It was being made by a smaller developer, and this was going to be their second effort with an 80s property. Before this, they made a rail-shooting Rambo game that received mixed to negative reception. To everyone's surprise, their Terminator game was an absolute blast. Terminator Resistance is easily one of my favorite games of the past few years. From a story standpoint of view, it acts as a prequel that leads into Terminator 1 and 2, while also delivering an enjoyable original story. Where many franchises are brought back and disrespected, from the Star Wars sequel trilogy, the recent Alien Covenant film, and even seen in Terminator Dark Fate, Terminator Resistance story was and still is a breath of fresh air because it feels in line with the first two films, along with respecting the lore, world, and its characters. It feels like a game that was made by the fans for the fans. Both the main game and expansion were great to experience. While critics were mixed and negative on the game itself, players and fans were quick to praise this title for all of its merits. And as such, many were asking, would this team make a Terminator sequel, or would they potentially tackle another 80s property? They more than proved themselves with Terminator Resistance, and when they announced that they were going to tackle RoboCop next, I was extremely excited. At the same time, a new Terminator game is also in development, and today I want to briefly discuss both. RoboCop Rogue City looks to have its gameplay centered around first-person shooting. From the trailer, we can see that we get to use his signature gun, and it potentially seems to operate just like how it did in the film. Some nice touches of detail is the over-the-top violence that was great in the film itself, and I'm glad to see that it appears here in the game as well. I do hope that there will be other weapons to use, and maybe even other options for upgrading. It seems you can pick up criminals and toss them around like ragdolls, and I wonder how in-depth the melee options are. Can you pick up large objects and throw them at people, or maybe can you use them as makeshift cover? With the name Rogue City, it does imply that maybe this game is an open world style game, and while that may end up being true, my best guess is that this game is not going to be an open world. My bet is that the level structure will be the same as Terminator Resistance. Resistance was separated into two different level types. They were either hub-like levels or more linear set-piece areas. The hub areas in RoboCop potentially could be related to different districts or sections of the city that we'll fight in. We can have our main objective along with side areas to explore and additional crimes to solve. Now if I'm wrong and this is actually an open world game, I would like it to be a more densely packed area rather than just one that's really big. I would prefer to be able to explore each of the buildings and really be able to dive into the city from a more personal angle. Another thing to note is that Choice Matters is tagged on the Steam page for this game, which implies that there will be story choices that will change how the plot unfolds or even the ending. This was in Terminator Resistance and affected your relationships with different characters. I'd like to see this feature return and hopefully be expanded upon in RoboCop.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
From a visual standpoint, they nailed the look of RoboCop along with the general look of the lighting and design of Detroit. Probably my favorite aspect about the trailer is how the developers confirm that Peter Weller is returning to voice RoboCop for the game. This is very rare to see in a video game, and when it's done well, it allows fans to have this playable experience with a genuine RoboCop voice. I know he is older now, and honestly, he may not sound like he did from the first film, but it is the fact that we get to have the original guy doing it again. And on another note, Peter Weller has done a great job in voice acting before. He portrayed Batman in the Dark Knight Returns animated films for DC. I sort of look at the potential of this situation like when Sean Connery was brought back from the From Russia with Love video game. During the PS2 generation, EA was making stellar Bond titles. One of their last ones was to make a tribute to the very first era of Bond. Sean Connery was pretty much retired at this point and was asked to come back to voice Bond one last time. The game itself would use From Russia with Love as its base, and then elements were added in to expand it for the game, along with adding in elements from other films like the jetpack from Thunderball. This was a tribute to his Bond, and while not sounding like he did back in his Bond films, this was Sean Connery voicing Bond again, and it was absolutely awesome, and now we can go back to this game just like with his films and experience them at any time. My point with this is that it makes these game adaptations feel even more special by having the original actor back in the role again. It's sort of best of the both worlds. With it being a game, the actor doesn't need to do anything physical for the role. This can all be done through gameplay, but the delivery and the voice makes it feel like an authentic experience. And while we have AI tech that can mimic actors like in some of the Disney Star Wars shows, it does still sound robotic and can be a bit jarring. And I'd rather have the actual actor doing the acting instead. On the same day that the RoboCop trailer was released, a new Terminator game was announced, and being made by a different studio. And honestly, the only thing that we know about this title is that it's an open-world survival game, so I wanted to explore some avenues that could be fun to see in this title. One of the biggest ones is the use of the Terminator. With this being a survival game, we probably start off with not having much as we slowly increase our skills, equipment, or maybe even our settlement. One thing that would be really engaging would be to incorporate the horror side of Terminator into this game. Terminator Resistance had light elements of this, but its gameplay was mainly focused on more direct and bigger action from the war. I think this new game could benefit from implementing something similar like how the Alien was used in Alien Isolation. For example, if you're exploring a town, there might be a Terminator that stops to patrol and investigate the area, as the player can use a variety of tactics to survive. One option could be to make calculated movements and escape the area altogether. Another could be to try to gather more supplies and see if there's actually a way to make a distraction, or even potentially a weapon to hurt the Terminator. But the Terminators should not be easy foes to defeat. There should be weight to their encounters, and adding an appropriate amount of horror would be an effective way to portray that power. Along with this, if done well, when a player can finally manage to defeat one, it will feel like a large accomplishment. Terminator Resistance had a good amount of hub-like areas that allowed for a lot of exploration, along with some Fallout 3-like minigames. These areas were great as it allowed the action to slow down a bit and really let the player take in the environments, along with the dire situation of the world. Conceptually, this might be a good starting point for the game, but then again, I have no idea if this upcoming game would be a first-person or third-person game. Right now, this Terminator game is an interesting concept that I hope is done very well. RoboCop Rogue City is set to come out in 2023, and I'm really excited for this. I do find myself getting less excited for new games as they are announced, but when they target a property that I love, I have a soft spot for this type of stuff. My best guess with the RoboCop game is that it's probably going to be faithful and a respectful adaptation of the film, and true to its characters and consistency of design. They have more than proved themselves with Terminator Resistance and have gained my trust. Combined with the inclusion of Peter Weller, and we're off to a good start. I do expect some elements of jankiness like in their prior game, but at the heart of what matters, the gameplay and story, I think RoboCop will do a good job here. I still don't know if we're going to see this as an open world game, and while I would like to see this myself, I have no problem that the developers want to go in more of a Deus Ex route for a more dense location to explore. For the new Terminator game, we don't really know much about it, and I wish the developers the very best of luck, and I hope that they can develop something as good or even better than Terminator Resistance. Now, since it's going to be a while until one of these games is released, and if you haven't played Terminator Resistance, I would highly recommend you try it out. It's a solid first-person shooter that went a bit under the radar. If you're a big fan of the films, you'll love the game, and if you're even just a casual fan, you'll get a solid shooting experience. Both the main game and expansion are worth picking up, and it's easily one of my favorite games for the past few years. In the comments section, let me know what you think of either of these two announcements. What do you hope to see in the RoboCop game, and what do you think the gameplay will be like for the new Terminator game? If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links are at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.